You wake up in a locked sports bag. Your body is decomposing. The heating in your Pimlico flat has been turned up to full blast despite the August warmth outside. The sports bag is padlocked from the outside. The keys are inside with you. No, wait. That's how Gareth Williams ended up. The 31-year-old GCHQ codebreaker on secondment to MI6. Found dead in 2010 after his colleagues failed to report him missing for days. The coroner ruled his death was unnatural and likely criminally mediated. The Metropolitan Police later declared it probably an accident. Intelligence sources quietly suggested otherwise. Let's rewind and start your MI6 career properly, the way most people attempt it, the way most people fail within the first month. It's late November 2025. You're sitting at your laptop in a coffee shop in Manchester, Bristol, Edinburgh, somewhere in Britain where you've convinced yourself you're ready for something extraordinary. The MI6 website glows on your screen. Careers. Intelligence officer. Apply now. You've watched the Bond films. You've read the Le Carré novels. You've followed the news about Russia's aggression in Ukraine, China's assertiveness, the Middle East in chaos. Under the new MI6 chief, Blaise Matrielli, the first woman to hold the position since the service was founded in 1909, the agency is recruiting more openly than ever before. They're looking for diverse talent, they say, people from all backgrounds. You're tuned to the Velvet Obscura. Tonight, you're joining British intelligence, or at least, you're going to try. So you click Apply. Here's what happens next, and why you wouldn't survive even a month of what comes after. The reality is this. Between the moment you click that button and the moment you might actually start working for MI6, 15 months will pass. 15 months of waiting, vetting, testing, and slowly realizing you've applied for a job that will require you to lie to everyone you love for the rest of your life. That's if you make it through at all. Most don't. But let's say you're one of the persistent ones. Let's walk through what your month in British intelligence would actually look like. You're feeling confident as you fill out the initial eligibility form. British citizen? Check. Resident in the UK for 7 of the last 10 years? Check. Minimum of a 2.2 degree in any subject? Check. Willing to undergo security clearance? Of course. The form asks about your motivation. You type something about wanting to serve your country, protect national security, make a difference in an increasingly unstable world. It sounds good. It even feels true as you're typing it. Then comes the situational judgment test. You're presented with hypothetical work-based scenarios. A colleague is behaving strangely. What do? You have conflicting orders from 2 superiors. How do you respond? You discover information that contradicts your assessment. What's your next step? There are no right answers, only ways to fail. You're being tested on how you think, how you react under pressure, whether you can live in moral gray areas without losing your mind. You submit the application. You wait. 3 months later, an email arrives. You've been selected to proceed to the next stage. Congratulations. Please complete the comprehensive application form. This one takes 6 hours. Scenario-based questions. Tell us about a time you handled conflict. Describe a situation where you had to maintain confidentiality. Explain how you'd approach a complex problem with limited information. You craft your answers carefully. You don't mention that you've never had to maintain the kind of confidentiality MI6 will demand. The kind where you can't tell your spouse why you're having nightmares. The kind where you watch your parents die without ever knowing what you actually did with your life. You submit it. You wait another 2 months. The email arrives on a Tuesday. You've been selected for developed vetting. This is the highest level of security clearance in the UK government. It will take approximately 6 months. During this time, investigators will examine every aspect of your life. Every aspect. Your financial records going back years, every credit card purchase, every overdraft. That time you were 3 weeks late on rent. That student loan you're still paying off. They'll want to know about all of it. Debt makes people vulnerable to coercion. Debt is leverage for hostile intelligence services. They'll contact everyone you know. Your university roommate from 8 years ago. Your ex-partner from that relationship that ended badly. Your neighbor who you had a noise complaint with. Your former manager who you didn't get along with. Each one will be asked about your character, your habits, your reliability, your secrets. They'll talk to your family. Your parents will be asked if you've ever shown signs of mental instability, substance abuse, or concerning political views. Your siblings will be questioned about your behavior growing up. Did you ever steal? Lie habitually? Show violent tendencies? Your online presence will be scrutinized. Every social media post for the last decade. Every comment thread you participated in. That joke you made 6 years ago that seemed funny at the time, but looks questionable now? They'll see it. That political opinion you expressed passionately after a few drinks? They'll evaluate whether it makes you a security risk. You receive a thick packet of forms. List every address you've lived at for the past 10 years. List every foreign national you've had significant contact with. List every trip abroad and the purpose of each visit. List every organization you've ever been a member of, including that climate activist group you joined for 3 months at university. There's a section about your relationships. Every significant romantic or sexual relationship for the past 10 years. Names, addresses, dates. Whether you're still in contact. Whether any of them were foreign nationals. Whether any of the breakups were acrimonious. You start to feel exposed. Naked. Every mistake, every indiscretion, every private moment of your life is about to be examined by strangers who will decide if you're trustworthy enough for Britain's secrets. And this is just the paperwork stage. The interviews come next. You sit across from a vetting officer in a windowless room. They've already read everything about you. Now they want to hear you explain it. Tell us about the 2-month gap in your employment history in 2021. You'd rather not. You were struggling with depression after a breakup. But you can't say that, can you? Mental health issues might disqualify you. So you say you were traveling. They make a note. They'll verify that. They'll find out you weren't traveling. They'll want to know why you lied. Tell us about your financial situation. You explain the student debt, the credit card balance, the fact that you're barely breaking even each month. They ask if you've ever been approached by anyone offering money for information. Of course not, you say. They make another note. Financial pressure, it says. Potential vulnerability to recruitment by hostile services. Tell us about your relationship history. You'd really rather not. But they insist. Every detail. Who initiated the breakups and why? Whether any arguments became physical. Whether you're still on good terms. Whether any ex-partners might have a reason to want revenge on you. You realize you're being assessed not just for loyalty, but for blackmail vulnerability. If Russia's FSB or China's MI6 wanted to compromise you, what would they use? An embarrassing secret? A financial need? A relationship complication? An angry ex with compromising photos? The vetting officer watches your face as you answer. They've been trained to spot lies, evasions, discomfort. You're sweating, not because you've done anything wrong, but because having your entire life examined feels inherently incriminating. The interview lasts 4 hours. When it's over, they tell you the process will take another few months. They'll be in touch. You go home. You sit on your couch. You realize that for the last 4 hours, You've been trying to convince strangers that you're trustworthy while they assumed you weren't. That's going to be your job if you get through this. Convincing people to trust you while never fully trusting anyone yourself. Your phone rings. It's your mother. The vetting officers contacted her yesterday. She wants to know what's going on. You can't tell her. The application process is confidential. She's worried. She thinks you've done something wrong. Why else would government investigators be asking about you? This is the first secret you'll keep from your family. There will be thousands more. You're still at your current job, sitting in meetings, pretending to care about quarterly targets and brand strategy. But your mind is elsewhere, wondering if the vetting will come back positive, wondering if you'll actually get the call. Your friends invite you out for drinks. You go, but you're distracted. One of them mentions they're thinking of moving to Spain. You realize that if you get this job, you might not be able to visit them. Depending on your posting, depending on your clearance level, your travel might be restricted. You might need approval before leaving the country, even for a holiday. Another friend is getting married next year. They're talking about the bachelor party in Amsterdam. You nod along. You don't mention that you might not be able to go. That by next year, if all of this works out, you'll be living a carefully constructed cover story that doesn't allow for spontaneous trips to the Netherlands. You're already becoming isolated, and you haven't even been accepted yet. 6 months pass. 6 months of waiting while your life is being examined by people you'll never meet. 6 months of wondering if that one stupid thing you did when you were 22 will disqualify you. 6 months of lying awake at night, remembering every questionable decision, every boundary you crossed, every rule you bent. The email arrives on a Monday morning. Your vetting has been approved. You've been invited to Fort Monkton for training. Report on the 1st of next month. Accommodations will be provided. Inform your current employer that you're leaving for a new position in government. Do not disclose which department or agency. You give your 2 weeks' notice. Your colleagues throw you a leaving party. They ask what you'll be doing. You give them the rehearsed answer. Policy work for the Foreign Office. Very boring stuff, really. Lots of paperwork. They believe you because it's easier than questioning. Your last day at your normal job is a Friday. The following Monday, you'll begin 6 months of training to become someone else. It's a cold morning in Hampshire. You're standing outside a Victorian-era fort that's been converted into MI6's Field Operations Training Center. The place has been training British spies since the 1950s. The walls hold decades of secrets. Some of the people trained here went on to become legends. Others were killed in the field. You don't know which category you'll fall into yet. You meet your fellow recruits. 12 of you made it this far. 2 will quit before the first week is over. Another 3 won't make it through the full 6 months. That's how it works. The training isn't designed to prepare you. It's designed to break the ones who can't handle it. There's a woman who studied Arabic at Oxford, a former military officer who served in Afghanistan, a tech specialist who speaks Mandarin, a lawyer who specialized in international law. All of you clever. All of you capable. None of you have any idea what you're actually in for. The first instructor introduces himself only as David. No last name, no background, just David. He's been with the service for 23 years. He tells you that nothing you've done in your life has prepared you for this work. He's right. The first lesson is about cover identities. You're each given a fictional person to become. Name, background, education, work history, family. You have 48 hours to memorize every detail. Your birthday, your parents' names, where you went to school, what you studied, where you've traveled, who your friends are, what your hobbies are. It seems manageable at first. Then David explains, You'll be this person for the next 6 months. When you introduce yourself to anyone, other recruits, instructors, support staff, you'll use this name, this background, these details. You'll live it every day until it becomes second nature. Because in the field, if you slip up for even a second, if you forget one detail of your cover story, you can get yourself killed. Or worse, you can get your assets killed. You spend the next 2 days becoming someone else. You practice saying your new name, your new birthday, your new history. You catch yourself about to say your real name and have to stop. This happens dozens of times. On day 3, you're walking through the training center and one of the instructors stops you. She asks your name. You tell her your real name. The name you've used for your entire life up until 72 hours ago. She makes a note on her clipboard. That's 1 strike. 3 strikes, and you're out of the program. You realize this isn't a test you can study for. This is about fundamentally changing how you think about yourself. About being able to hold 2 identities in your mind simultaneously and deploy the right one at the right time without hesitation. That night, you lie in your bunk and practice. Your name is Sarah Mitchell. You were born in Leeds on March 15, 1996. Your father was a teacher, your mother a nurse. You have 1 brother. You studied international relations at Nottingham. You've never been to Thailand. You've never dated anyone named James. You don't have a dog named Charlie, except you do. Your real life has a James, a Charlie, a Thailand. But Sarah Mitchell doesn't. And for the next 6 months, you are Sarah Mitchell. You fall asleep whispering lies to yourself. This is your life now. The next morning, language training begins. 4 hours every morning. Immersive. Intensive. You thought you were decent at languages because you took French at school and traveled through Europe. You weren't prepared for this. If you're learning Russian, you're learning to think in Russian, to dream in Russian, to respond instinctively to questions without translating in your head first. Because in the field, that split-second delay while you mentally convert English to Russian will tell an FSB officer that you're not who you claim to be. You're learning Mandarin. The tones make your brain ache. There are 4 tones, and each one changes the meaning of a word completely. You practice the same word 50 times. Your instructor, a native speaker who worked in Beijing for a decade, shakes her head. Again. Wrong tone. You sound like you're asking for vinegar when you meant to say mother. In the field, that kind of mistake doesn't just embarrass you. It identifies you as a foreigner. It makes people suspicious. It burns your cover. The headaches become constant. Your brain is trying to rewire itself. You're learning to think in a different language while maintaining your cover identity, while remembering your actual identity, while appearing calm and confident. Some nights, you wake up speaking in the language you're learning. You don't remember the dreams. You just know your roommate tells you that you are having a full conversation with yourself in Mandarin at 3 in the morning. Surveillance detection training begins. You learn to walk routes through Portsmouth that expose anyone following you. You learn to use reflections in shop windows to spot watchers. You learn to identify vehicles that appear too often. You learn to sense when you're being observed. The instructors tell you that Britain operates on hostile intelligence services' home soil constantly. MI6 has officers in Moscow right now, in Beijing, in Tehran. And those cities are full of counterintelligence officers whose job is to identify and neutralize British spies. You practice in Portsmouth because the city has actual hostile intelligence presence. Russia operates out of their embassy. China has consular staff who are really MSS officers. When you're running surveillance detection routes through the city center, some of those people following you aren't instructors. They're actual foreign intelligence officers watching to see if you're worth recruiting. You develop paranoia. Healthy paranoia, the instructors call it. You start looking over your shoulder constantly, checking reflections, memorizing faces, noticing patterns. One afternoon, you're grabbing coffee. You see a man in a gray jacket at a table by the window. An hour later, you're in a bookshop, and the same man is browsing 2 aisles over. That evening, you're at a pub with other recruits, and he's at the bar. You report it to your instructor. She nods. That's Ivan. He's FSB. He's been watching our training facility for 6 months. He knows you're all intelligence officers in training. He's evaluating who might be vulnerable to approach, who might be persuaded to work for Russia instead. You realize you're not even an operational officer yet, and you're already on a hostile intelligence services radar. This is what the rest of your career will be like. Watched, evaluated, targeted. Asset recruitment training begins. This is where the job stops being about you and starts being about manipulating other human beings. You're taught how to identify vulnerabilities, financial need, ideological disillusionment, ego, revenge, loneliness. Everyone has a pressure point. Everyone has something they want or need badly enough that they'll betray their country for it. You practice on your fellow recruits. You're given profiles. This person is a mid-level official in their government. They're underpaid and resentful. They have 2 children, and their spouse is ill. Medical bills are piling up. Approach them. Build rapport. Find the angle that makes them consider crossing the line. It feels disgusting. You're sitting across from another trainee, someone you've been living alongside for months, and you're coldly calculating how to exploit their simulated financial crisis to turn them into a spy for Britain. Your instructor watches. She gives feedback. You're too sympathetic. They can sense you're uncomfortable with what you're doing. You need to believe in the righteousness of the cause. You need to genuinely convince yourself that you're helping them by recruiting them. You try again. This time you lean into it. You mirror their body language. You express concern about their situation. You let them talk about their problems. You suggest, casually, that you might know someone who could help. Financial help. In exchange for very simple information. Nothing that would really compromise their country. Just minor things. Context. Background. Things they probably already discuss with colleagues anyway. Your instructor nods. Better. You sounded sincere. Like you actually cared. The sick part is, you did care. You genuinely felt sympathy for this person's simulated crisis, and you still manipulated them. That's the skill. Caring and exploiting simultaneously. That night you sit in the common room. The Oxford graduate who's learning Arabic is crying quietly. She came here because she wanted to protect Britain from terrorism. She didn't realize the job would be this morally complex, this psychologically corrosive. She quits the next morning. 10 of you remain. You learn about intelligence reporting, how to write assessments, how to evaluate source reliability, how to communicate uncertainty without undermining the intelligence value, how to present information to policymakers who will use it to make decisions about war and peace. You read actual intelligence reports from past operations. Some of them led to successful counterterrorism operations. Others were wrong, and people died because of it. One report you study was written by an MI6 officer in Damascus in 2012. It assessed the likelihood of chemical weapons use by the Assad regime. It concluded the risk was low. 4 months later, Assad used sarin gas in Ghouta. 1,400 people died. The officer who wrote that assessment is still with the service. They have to live with being wrong. With 1,400 deaths that maybe could have been prevented if their analysis had been different. Your instructor tells you this isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to make you understand the weight of the work. Your assessments will inform policies that affect thousands or millions of lives. You need to be right. But you also need to understand that sometimes you won't be. And you'll have to keep working anyway. You're learning to live with the possibility of catastrophic failure. You've completed training. 10 of you made it through. You're assigned to Vauxhall Cross, the actual MI6 headquarters on the south bank of the Thames. The building that everyone in London knows is the spy headquarters, but no one talks about. You're given your first operational role. Reports officer. You'll be working in an open plan office on the 3rd floor. Desk, computer with classified access, secure phone. Your job is to validate intelligence from agents in the field, assess reliability, and write reports for government departments. It's not glamorous. It's never glamorous. Your first day, you're given access to files on ongoing operations. You read through reports from an MI6 officer in Beirut who's running an asset inside Hezbollah. You read intelligence from an officer in Moscow who's cultivating a contact in the Russian Defense Ministry. You read updates from Turkey, from Pakistan, from Kazakhstan. You realize that dozens of people are risking their lives right now to collect this information. And your job is to evaluate whether they're telling the truth. You're also given access to imagery intelligence, satellite photos, drone footage, surveillance photographs. Some of it is routine. A weapons depot in North Korea, a military base in Iran, infrastructure in contested regions. Some of it is horrific. There's footage from Syria, a mass grave being excavated, bodies in various states of decomposition. Men, women, children. You're supposed to count them. Identify any distinguishing features. Cross-reference with lists of missing persons. You spend 4 hours looking at dead bodies. When you finish, you write a clinical report. Estimated number of casualties. Likely date of death. Probable cause. Possible perpetrators. You go home. Your flatmate asks how your day was. You say fine. Paperwork, mostly. You don't mention the children. You eat dinner. You try to watch television. You can't focus. Every time you close your eyes, you see the footage. You go to bed. You dream about mass graves. You wake up at 2 in the morning and vomit. This is day 1. The next morning, you're back at your desk. There's new intelligence to review. An asset in Damascus is reporting on Syrian government military movements. The intelligence is good, specific, actionable. But there's a problem. The asset missed the last 2 scheduled meetings. Your supervisor asks you to draft an assessment of the situation. You review the file. The asset is a mid-level Syrian officer motivated by money and disillusionment with Assad. He's been reporting for 18 months. Generally reliable, but he's also been showing signs of stress in recent months, requests for more money, complaints about danger. You write your assessment. There are 3 possibilities. 1. The asset is simply being cautious because of increased security measures. 2. The asset has been compromised but hasn't been arrested yet, possibly being used by Syrian intelligence to feed disinformation. 3. The asset has been arrested and is either being interrogated or is already dead. You recommend suspension of the operation pending confirmation of the asset's status. You submit the report. You don't know what happens next. You're not cleared for that information. 2 weeks later, you're in a meeting and someone mentions Damascus. The operation has been terminated. You ask what that means. Your supervisor says the asset's name appeared on a list of arrests published by Syrian state media. He was charged with espionage, executed 3 days later. You helped run an operation that got someone killed, indirectly. You were just evaluating intelligence, writing reports. But your work was part of the chain that led to a man being put against a wall and shot. No one at the office seems particularly affected by this. It's part of the job. Assets get burned. It happens. You move on to the next operation. You go home. You sit on your couch. You realize that you're never going to be able to talk about this. Not with your family, not with friends, not with a therapist outside the service. You're going to carry this alone. This is month 1. You haven't even been deployed overseas yet. Congratulations. You've been selected for your first overseas posting. Berlin. It's considered a relatively safe assignment. Germany is an ally. You'll be working out of the British Embassy with light cover. Everyone will know your intelligence. That's fine. It's how the game is played. You arrive in Berlin in November. The city is cold and gray. You check into your temporary accommodation, a flat in Charlottenburg arranged by the service. You're given a diplomatic passport and credentials identifying you as a political officer with the Foreign Office. Your actual job is to cultivate contacts in the German government, military, and intelligence services, to recruit assets, to gather intelligence on Russian activities in Germany, to monitor extremist groups, to track financial flows that might indicate terrorism financing. You're also supposed to identify and assess potential Russian intelligence officers operating in Berlin, because there are dozens of them. And they're doing to Germany exactly what you're doing. Everyone spying on everyone. Allies spying on each other's enemies. Enemies spying on allies. The whole city is one giant intelligence operation. Your first week, you attend a reception at the Russian embassy. Yes, the Russian embassy. You're there with diplomatic credentials. You're supposed to observe, make mental notes of who's present, identify any interesting conversations. A man in his 40s approaches you, introduces himself as Dmitri, cultural attaché, which probably means SVR, Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service. He asks what you do at the British Embassy. You give your cover answer. Political affairs. Very boring. He smiles. He knows you're MI6. You know he's SVR. Neither of you acknowledges it. You have a pleasant conversation about Berlin's art scene. He mentions he enjoys hiking in the Grunewald forest. You file that away. Potential meeting spot for asset handlings. This is your life now. Polite conversations with people who would happily compromise you if given the chance. Dmitri isn't your enemy in the sense that he wants to kill you, but he would absolutely recruit you if he could. Turn you into a double agent, get you to feed British secrets to Moscow, and you'd do the same to him if the opportunity arose. You attend more receptions, more dinners, more conferences. You smile. You network. You collect business cards. You file reports on interesting people you meet. You're building a mental map of Berlin's intelligence landscape. You're also being watched. The SVR knows who you are. They photograph you entering and leaving the embassy. They note which restaurants you frequent, which U-Bahn lines you use, who you meet with. They're building a profile, assessing your vulnerabilities. One evening you notice a woman following you. Not subtly, she wants you to know. It's intimidation. A message. We're watching. We know who you are. You report it to your station chief. He shrugs. Par for the course. The Russians are always watching our people in Berlin. Just make sure you're not doing anything compromising when they're filming. Filming. They're filming you. There are cameras watching your flat, your daily routes, your meetings. The Russians are building an archive of your movements that they'll use if they ever want to blackmail or burn you. You lie in bed that night in your Berlin flat. You're exhausted. You've been in the field for 1 month and you're already developing the paranoia that will define your career. The sense that everyone is a potential threat, that nowhere is safe, that you can never fully relax. Your phone buzzes. Your mother calling. You don't answer. You can't, because if you answer, she'll ask how you're doing, and you can't tell her about any of this. You can't tell her about the Russian intelligence officers who photograph you daily, about the asset in Damascus who was executed, about the mass graves in Syria. So you don't answer. You let it go to voicemail. You listen to her message later. She sounds worried. You never call anymore, she says. Is everything all right? No, you think. Nothing is all right. And it never will be again. The station chief calls you in. There's a potential recruitment opportunity. A Russian official stationed in Berlin. Mid-level. Access to useful information about Russian intelligence operations in Europe. Financial pressures. Wife's medical issues requiring expensive treatment. Classic vulnerability. Your job is to make initial contact. Assess feasibility. Report back. You're given a file. Mikhail Sokolov, 42 years old, works in the commercial section of the Russian embassy, which is cover for SVR operations support. He has 2 children. His wife Elena has a chronic kidney condition. Russian state insurance doesn't cover the treatments she needs. He's been borrowing money from relatives. You study everything about him, his routine, his interests, his vulnerabilities. You're looking for the approach angle, the moment when you can naturally bump into him and start building rapport. The opportunity comes at a technology conference. He's there representing Russian commercial interests. You're there as a British political officer interested in emerging tech. Both of you are lying about why you're really there. You position yourself near the coffee station during a break. He approaches for a refill. You make small talk. The conference is interesting, isn't it? His English is excellent. You compliment him on it. He seems pleased. You introduce yourself, your cover identity. He introduces himself. You exchange business cards, professional networking. Nothing suspicious. You mention you're new to Berlin. He offers a few restaurant recommendations. You thank him. You suggest perhaps getting together for coffee sometime. Compare notes on the city. He agrees, enthusiastically. This is how it begins, not with a dramatic proposition in a dark alley, but with coffee and small talk and the slow building of trust. You meet him the following week, a cafe in Mitte. You talk about Berlin, about your respective work, still using covers, about families. He mentions his wife's health issues, not in detail, just acknowledges that it's been stressful. You express sympathy. You don't push. You're building rapport, establishing yourself as someone who cares about him as a person, not as a potential asset. Over the next 6 weeks, you meet with him 4 more times. Each meeting lasts a bit longer. The conversations get more personal. He talks about his frustrations with his work, the bureaucracy, the way the Russian government doesn't take care of its people, his wife's condition worsening while they struggle to afford treatment. You listen. You express understanding. You never mention intelligence. You never suggest anything inappropriate. You're just a sympathetic colleague, a friend. At the 7th meeting, he's particularly stressed. His wife needs a procedure, 20,000 euros, money he doesn't have. He doesn't know what to do. This is the moment, the opening you've been building toward. You mention, carefully, that you might know someone who could help, a discreet charitable foundation that assists people in medical crises. No strings attached, of course, just people wanting to help. He looks at you. He's not stupid. He knows what you are. He knows what you're offering. But his wife needs treatment. He asks what would be expected in return. You say, honestly, that any support would come with hopes of friendship, perhaps occasional information sharing, nothing that would compromise his position or his country. Just context. Background. The kind of things colleagues discuss anyway. He's quiet for a long time. Then he says he needs to think about it. You give him your contact details, your real MI6 contact details, not the cover ones. He takes them. He leaves. You sit in the cafe after he's gone. You feel sick. You've just offered money to a desperate man in exchange for betraying his country. You've exploited his wife's illness, his financial crisis, his vulnerability. This is espionage. This is the job. Finding people at their weakest and convincing them to cross lines they never thought they'd cross. You report the meeting to your station chief. He's pleased. Good work. Now we wait to see if he bites. 2 weeks later, Mikhail contacts you. He'd like to meet. He has some questions about the foundation you mentioned. You meet at a different location. More secure, more private. You explain the arrangement. Financial support for his wife's treatment. In exchange, he provides information. Intelligence on SVR operations. Internal communications. Names of Russian officers operating under diplomatic cover in Europe. He agrees, but he has conditions. No meetings at regular intervals that could be detected. No physical handovers that could be photographed. Everything done through secure digital channels. And if he's ever at risk of exposure, he and his family must be extracted to Britain. You agree to all of it. You tell him he's making the right choice. You're helping him, helping his wife, helping to expose a corrupt regime that doesn't care about its own people. You believe some of this as you're saying it. The cognitive dissonance required for the job. You're both exploiting him and helping him, both lying and telling truth, both his friend and his handler. He provides his first intelligence report 2 days later. Names and cover identities of 12 SVR officers operating across Western Europe. It's good intelligence, specific, verifiable. Your station chief is thrilled. This is a significant recruitment. You've just landed an asset with access to Russian intelligence operations. This will look excellent on your record. You go home that night. You should feel accomplished. Instead, you feel hollow, because you know what happens if Mikhail is caught. You've read enough files, seen enough outcomes. Russia doesn't prosecute traitors. They execute them, or they poison them, or they arrange accidents. If Mikhail is caught, he'll be tortured for information about his British handlers. Then he'll be killed. His wife won't get her treatment. His children will grow up knowing their father was a traitor. And you'll be the person who recruited him, who convinced him to take that risk, who exploited his desperation. You lie in bed staring at the ceiling. This is month 5. You've become someone who ruins lives for Britain's national security. You're not sleeping well anymore. When you do sleep, you dream about Syria, about mass graves, about Mikhail being arrested, about the asset in Damascus facing a firing squad. You wake up at 3 in the morning sweating. You check your secure phone. No emergency messages. Everything is fine. Except it's not fine. You just can't articulate why. During the day, you're functional, professional. You attend meetings. You write reports. You manage your asset. Everything by the book. But at night, alone in your Berlin flat, the facade cracks. You pour yourself a drink. Just one. Just to take the edge off. Just to stop your mind racing through all the things that could go wrong. 1 drink becomes 2. Then 3. You're not an alcoholic. You're just coping. Everyone copes somehow. You think about calling the MI6 mental health support services. They exist. Theoretically. But using them means putting it in your file. Promotion boards will see it. Assignment officers will see it. It might affect your career, might mark you as weak, unable to handle the stress. So you don't call. You handle it yourself. With alcohol and sleepless nights and the creeping sense that you're losing yourself. A colleague from the political section asks what you've been working on. You give a vague answer. Policy analysis. Very dull. They accept this because they're not cleared to know the truth. You're surrounded by people, and you've never felt more alone, because none of them can understand what you're carrying. The secrets, the moral compromises, the weight of consequences you can't discuss. You leave the party early. You walk along the Spree River. It's cold. You watch the water and think about Gareth Williams, the GCHQ codebreaker found dead in a locked bag. You think about the 14 suspected Russian assassinations on British soil, all ruled accidents or suicides. You think about how easily you could become another statistic, another intelligence officer who died under suspicious circumstances that were never properly investigated. You're not being paranoid. This is reality. You work in a profession where people kill each other quietly and governments pretend it didn't happen. You go home. You drink. You fall asleep on your couch with the television on. You dream about being locked in a sports bag, unable to breathe, unable to escape. The heating turned up. Your body decomposing while no one looks for you. You wake up gasping. It's 4 in the morning. You're going to be exhausted at work. Again. This is month 5, and you're already breaking. Mikhail misses a scheduled check-in. This happens sometimes. He could be busy. There could be heightened security at the embassy, making contact risky. It's probably nothing, but probably isn't certain. And in intelligence work, uncertainty kills. You wait 48 hours. No contact. You try the secondary communication channel. Nothing. You report it to your station chief. He's concerned, but not alarmed. Not yet. Assets go dark sometimes. Usually there's a reasonable explanation. A week passes. Still nothing. You check open source intelligence. Russian diplomatic activity in Berlin. Personnel movements. Nothing unusual reported. 2 weeks. You're checking your phone obsessively. Every message notification makes your heart race. But it's never Mikhail. Your station chief calls you in. There's been a development. German intelligence, the BND, has reported unusual Russian counterintelligence activity. Increased security sweeps at the Russian embassy. Several staff members abruptly recalled to Moscow. Mikhail's name isn't on the list of recalls, but his section chief is. This could mean they're investigating a leak, or it could be unrelated. You don't know. 3 weeks. You're barely functioning. You keep thinking about Damascus, about the asset who was arrested and executed, about how your assessment was part of the operation that got him killed. Is Mikhail in a cell right now? Is he being interrogated? Is he giving up your name, your meeting locations, your communication methods? If he is, you could be burned, photographed, named, declared persona non grata, and expelled from Germany. Best case scenario. Worst case, Russia might decide to make an example. Intelligence officers do sometimes die in mysterious accidents, especially ones who've been recruiting Russian assets. Your station chief relocates you, different flat, different daily routines. Security protocols increased. Just precaution, he says, but you know what it means. They think you might be compromised. They're protecting the operation, not you. You're living out of a suitcase in a safe house in Wedding. You can't contact anyone outside the service. You're isolated, waiting to see if your asset has been captured and if you've been exposed. This is the reality no one tells you about. The waiting, the uncertainty, the slow-motion terror of not knowing if everything you've done is about to collapse. Month 2 of silence. Your station chief calls you back to Vauxhall Cross. The Berlin posting is being terminated. You're being reassigned to desk work in London until they can assess what happened. You fly back to Britain on a commercial flight. You sit in economy class surrounded by families going on holiday. children excited about trips, couples planning their futures. You're carrying the knowledge that you might have gotten a man killed, that his wife will never get her treatment, that his children will grow up without a father, because you exploited his desperation and recruited him into a profession that eats people alive. You don't know for certain that he's dead. You'll probably never know for certain. That's how intelligence work goes sometimes. People disappear. Questions remain unanswered. You carry the uncertainty forever. You're reassigned to the analysis section, back at Vauxhall Cross. Desk work. No field operations. You're being kept close while they investigate the Berlin situation. You report to an office on the 4th floor. Different supervisor. Different team. You're writing assessments on Russian intelligence operations, looking for patterns, trying to identify compromised networks. You're looking for what happened to Mikhail. That's what this is really about. Every report you analyze, you're searching for evidence of what went wrong, whether you made a mistake, whether there's something you could have done differently. The other analysts can tell you're struggling. They don't say anything. Mental health is still stigma in the intelligence community despite the diversity initiatives and the wellness programs. You're supposed to be resilient, capable of handling the stress. If you can't, you're weak. You're developing a drinking problem. Still functional, still professional at work. But at home, every night, you're drinking to shut your brain off, to stop the loop of questioning and guilt and fear. You think about requesting help. MI6 has psychologists, support services. But using them means putting it in your file, means possibly losing your clearance, means potentially ending the career you've sacrificed everything for. So you don't request help. You handle it privately, like everyone else does. A colleague invites you for drinks after work. The first social interaction you've had in weeks. You agree. You go to a pub in Vauxhall. Just intelligence officers. All MI6 or GCHQ staff. The only people you can partially be honest with. Someone mentions Berlin. Asks if you heard about the Russian embassy situation. You say you heard something. Your hands are shaking as you lift your pint glass. They don't know it was your asset. They're not cleared for that information. But they know something happened. Everyone knows when an operation goes bad, even if they don't know details. The conversation moves on. Someone's complaining about bureaucracy. Someone else is talking about a difficult posting in Lagos. Normal shop talk among spies. You realize you can't relate to any of it anymore. These people are still functioning, still handling the work. You're barely holding together after 6 months. You excuse yourself. You go home. You drink. You fall asleep, hoping you don't dream. You dream anyway. Mikhail. Damascus. Gareth Williams. Mass graves. All of it mixed together in a nightmare where you're the one in the locked bag, where you're the one being executed, where your body is the one in the Syrian dirt. You wake up at 2 in the morning. You're crying. You don't remember the last time you cried. Maybe during training. Maybe before that. You check your phone, hoping for news about Mikhail. There's nothing. There's never anything. This is month 6, and you're done. You're sitting at your desk, staring at intelligence reports, trying to focus. You can't. The words blur together. Your hands are shaking. You've been drinking more. Every night now. Sometimes starting before dinner. Just to function. Just to get through. You haven't slept properly in weeks. The nightmares are constant. When you do manage to sleep, you wake up after an hour or two. Heart racing, covered in sweat. The images from Syria. The thought of Mikhail. The locked sports bag. You're having panic attacks. Usually at night. Sometimes at work. You hide in the bathroom. Breathing exercises. Trying to calm down. Trying to appear normal when you come out. Your supervisor has noticed. She calls you in for a meeting, asks if you're all right. You say yes. Just tired. Adjusting to desk work after the field posting. She doesn't believe you, but she doesn't push. As long as you're functional, as long as you're producing work, she won't mandate intervention. Because mandating intervention means paperwork, means involving medical services, means potentially losing an officer. It's easier to let you struggle quietly. That afternoon, you're reviewing reports on Russian counterintelligence operations. There's a brief mention. 3 officers from the Russian embassy in Berlin were quietly recalled in January. One of them was executed for espionage in March. The name isn't given. The details are sparse. But you know in your gut that it was Mikhail. You read the report again and again, looking for confirmation, looking for denial, finding neither. You close your office door. You sit at your desk. You put your head in your hands. You've been doing this for 7 months. 7 months since you started training. 7 months of lying to everyone, of carrying secrets, of manipulating people, of watching mass graves footage, of recruiting a desperate man who probably got executed because of you. 7 months. And you can't do it anymore. You think about Gareth Williams again. Found dead in circumstances that made no sense. Ruled an accident despite evidence suggesting otherwise. You understand now why intelligence officers sometimes die mysteriously. Because this work breaks you. And when you're broken, you become a liability. And liabilities get dealt with. You're not suggesting MI6 killed Gareth Williams. The evidence doesn't support that. But you understand now how easy it would be to not investigate too thoroughly. To rule it an accident and move on. Because intelligence services don't want to admit their officers are dying under suspicious circumstances. Don't want to admit the work destroys people. You go home early. You tell your supervisor you're not feeling well. She lets you go. She's probably relieved she doesn't have to deal with whatever is obviously wrong with you. You sit in your flat. You drink. You think about calling your mother, your friends, anyone who knows the real you, the person you were before all of this. But you can't, because they don't have security clearance, because you can't tell them anything real, because the moment you joined MI6, you lost the ability to have honest relationships with anyone outside the intelligence community. You think about quitting, just walking in tomorrow and resigning. There's precedent. People leave the service. It happens. But what would you do after? You've spent 7 months lying about everything. Your job, your experiences, your whole life is classified. You can't even put MI6 on your CV. You'd have to say you worked for the Foreign Office. More lies. Forever. And the secrets wouldn't go away. You'd carry them for the rest of your life. The things you've seen. The things you've done. The people you've compromised. Mikhail. Damascus. All of it. You'd be alone with it forever. No therapist you could see. No one you could talk to. Just you and your guilt and your trauma. Forever. You realize there's no way out. You're trapped. Either you stay and let the work destroy you slowly, or you leave and carry the damage alone for the rest of your life. This is month 7. This is why you wouldn't survive working for MI6. It's May 2026. You're sitting at your desk at Vauxhall Cross. The building is decorated for Christmas. There's a tree in the lobby, holiday cards on desks, people talking about their plans for the holidays. You're staring at your computer screen, unable to focus, unable to care. Your supervisor calls you in. She sits you down. She tells you she's referring you to occupational health. Mandatory. You're exhibiting signs of stress, and it's affecting your work. You nod. You don't argue. You know this means it goes in your file. Means promotion boards will see it. Means your career trajectory just changed. You don't care anymore. You attend the appointment with the MI6 psychologist. You sit in a comfortable chair in a comfortable office, and a kind woman asks you how you're doing. You consider lying. You've been lying for 7 months. What's one more? But you're too tired. So you tell her some of it, not everything. You can't tell her about specific operations. That's still classified. But you tell her about the nightmares, the drinking, the panic attacks, the sense that you're losing yourself. She listens. She takes notes. She asks careful questions. At the end of the session, she tells you she's recommending a leave of absence. 4 weeks. To rest. To stabilize. With mandatory follow-up sessions when you return. You know what this means. You're being sidelined. Possibly permanently. Officers who can't handle the stress don't get promoted. Don't get operational assignments. They get desk work, analysis, support roles, the kind of jobs that don't require you to be psychologically intact. You've failed. 7 months in, and you've failed. You go home. You pack. You're going to stay with your parents for the holidays. You haven't seen them in months. They don't know what you actually do. They never will. On the train home, you stare out the window at the British countryside passing by. You think about Gareth Williams, about the asset in Damascus, about Mikhail, about all the ways this profession destroys people. You think about Richard Moore, the MI6 chief who retired in October 2025 after 5 years in the role. He gave a speech about how intelligence officers operate in the shadows, making sacrifices the public never sees. How they protect Britain from threats most people never know exist. It sounded noble in the speech, but living it is different. Living it means carrying secrets that corrode your soul, means lying to everyone, means being complicit in operations that get people killed, means watching mass graves and recruiting desperate people and functioning while your mental health disintegrates. You arrive at your parents' house. Your mother hugs you. She says you look thin, tired. Are you taking care of yourself? You lie. You say work has been busy, but you're fine. Really. She doesn't believe you, but she doesn't push. Families learn not to push when someone works for the government in a job they can't discuss. That night you lie in your childhood bedroom, the room where you grew up, where you dreamed about doing something important, something meaningful. You got what you wanted. You're working for MI6, protecting Britain, making a difference, and it's destroying you. Let's be honest about what just happened in this story. You didn't even make it through 1 operational month before the cracks started showing. 7 months total, from application to breaking point, and most of that was training and vetting. The actual field work, 2 months. 2 months before your asset possibly got killed and you started having panic attacks. This isn't a story about weakness. This is a story about the reality of intelligence work that MI6's recruitment website doesn't mention. The psychological cost, the moral injury, the impossible burden of secrets. Here's what would actually happen to most people who tried to join MI6. 75% would fail the vetting process. Financial issues, questionable associations, foreign travel that raises flags, or simply evidence that they can't maintain confidentiality. The developed vetting process is designed to reject most applicants. Of those who make it to Fort Monkton, another 20% would quit during training. When they realize maintaining a cover identity for 6 months is just the beginning. When they understand they'll be living lies for decades. When they grasp the moral complexity of recruiting assets by exploiting vulnerability. Of those who complete training and get deployed, many don't last a year. Not because they're incompetent, because the work is psychologically unsurvivable for most normal humans. The drinking culture in intelligence services isn't coincidental. It's a coping mechanism. Officers self-medicate because seeking official help means admitting weakness, means potentially losing clearance, means career suicide. The mental health support exists. On paper. In reality, using it marks you as damaged goods. Promotion boards see it. Assignment officers see it. You get quietly sidelined into desk work where you can't cause problems. And the ones who do survive, who last 10, 20, 30 years in the service, they're not necessarily stronger than you. They're just broken in ways that don't interfere with functionality. Divorced, alcoholic, emotionally unavailable, carrying secrets that will haunt them until they die. But operational. The recruitment website talks about excitement, adventure, making a difference, protecting Britain from existential threats. All of that is technically true. What they don't mention is the cost. The relationships destroyed because you can't be honest with anyone. The mental health degradation from exposure to atrocities. The moral injury from manipulating desperate people. The trauma from knowing your assessments might lead to deaths. The isolation from being unable to process any of it with anyone outside the intelligence community. They don't mention Gareth Williams, how MI6 failed to report him missing, how the heating was turned up to accelerate decomposition, how it was ruled an accident despite the impossibility of locking yourself in a bag from the outside, how intelligence sources quietly suggest Russian involvement, how convenient it is to rule intelligence officer deaths as accidents rather than assassinations. They don't mention the 14 suspected Russian killings on British soil between 2012 and 2018. All officially accidents or suicides. Because admitting that hostile intelligence services are assassinating people in Britain would require responses that neither government wants. They don't mention the retention crisis. How MI6 loses trained personnel at rates higher than other government departments. How the work burns people out. How the best intelligence officers often leave after 5 or 10 years because they can't sustain the psychological damage. They don't mention that by October 2025, when Blaise Metroelli took over as the first female chief in MI6's 116-year history, the agency was still struggling with the fundamental problem. How do you recruit and retain talented people for work that systematically destroys their mental health? The answer: you don't. Not really. You recruit them. You train them. You deploy them. Some break quickly. Some last longer. Eventually, most leave, damaged in ways they'll never fully articulate, and you recruit new ones to replace them. The cycle continues. This is why you wouldn't last a month as an MI6 intelligence officer. Not because you're weak, not because you're incompetent, but because the job requires you to be something that's unsustainable for most humans. Constantly lying, constantly manipulating, constantly carrying secrets, constantly witnessing or being complicit in things that violate your moral core, constantly functioning despite the psychological damage. And here's the worst part: some people can do it. Some people have the specific psychological makeup that allows them to compartmentalize effectively, to maintain cover identities without losing themselves, to recruit assets without feeling crushing guilt, to review footage of mass graves and then go home and eat dinner. Those people are either remarkably resilient or remarkably damaged to begin with. And MI6 needs both types, because the work has to be done. Britain has adversaries. Russia is assassinating people on British soil. China is stealing intellectual property and surveillance technology. Terrorism remains a threat. Climate change will create new security challenges. The intelligence community, MI6, MI5, GCHQ, exists to address these threats. Someone has to do this work. It just probably can't be you. It can't be most people. Because most people aren't built to sustain the psychological cost of espionage. The officers who do survive, the ones who make careers out of it. They deserve recognition they'll never receive, because their work is secret. Their sacrifices are invisible. Their names will never be public. When they die, maybe in locked sports bags, or poison attacks, or convenient accidents, the full truth might never come out. That's the deal. Protection, British national security, at the cost of your mental health, your relationships, your ability to ever be fully honest with anyone, and possibly your life. And afterwards, maybe a quiet retirement with secrets you can never share and trauma you can never process. So you're still on leave. You've been attending the mandatory therapy sessions. The MI6 psychologist is kind, professional. She can't change the fundamental reality of the work, but she can help you develop coping mechanisms. You're drinking less, sleeping slightly better. The nightmares persist, but with less frequency. Your supervisor calls. She wants to know if you're planning to return. You have to make a decision. Return to desk work. Operations are off the table for now, possibly forever. Or resign and try to rebuild a life outside the service. You think about Mikhail. You still don't know for certain what happened to him. You probably never will. Intelligence agencies don't confirm deaths of assets. It's better for operational security if you never know. But you have to assume. You have to carry the possibility that he was executed because you recruited him. That his wife didn't get treatment. That his children grew up knowing their father was a traitor. You think about Damascus, about the mass graves you reviewed frame by frame, about writing clinical reports describing decomposed bodies like you were cataloging inventory. You think about Berlin, about being watched by Russian intelligence, about the paranoia that never fully goes away, about checking reflections and spotting tails, and never being able to walk through a city without assessing threats. You think about what 7 months did to you, and you imagine 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, a whole career of this, of lying and manipulating and carrying secrets and functioning despite accumulating trauma. You make your decision. You call your supervisor back. You're resigning. Effective immediately. She's not surprised. She's kind about it. Says you showed promise. Says the work isn't for everyone. Says you're making the right choice for your well-being. She doesn't mention that you're the 4th officer from your training cohort to quit. Out of 12 who started, 6 remain after just 7 months. That's a 50% attrition rate. That's normal. You complete the exit process, return your credentials, sign additional Official Secrets Act paperwork. You'll never be able to discuss anything you did. Ever. You'll carry it alone forever. You're given a cover story for your next job. You worked in the Foreign Office. Policy analysis. Nothing exciting. Very bureaucratic. If anyone asks, that's what you tell them. More lies. Even leaving, you have to lie. Your parents are relieved when you tell them you're leaving government work. They never believed the Foreign Office story anyway. They knew something was wrong. They're glad you're getting out. Your friends welcome you back. Where have you been, they ask. You've been so distant, so unavailable, so different. You make excuses. Work was demanding. You're glad to be done with it. Let's just move forward. They don't push. They're happy to have you back. They don't know you'll never really be back, because the person you were before MI6 doesn't exist anymore. 7 months changed you fundamentally. You're carrying secrets and trauma and guilt that you can never share. You're going to be isolated forever in ways they'll never understand. So here's what we've learned. Why you wouldn't last a month as an MI6 intelligence officer. The recruitment process takes 15 months and rejects most applicants before they ever get to training. The vetting process examines every aspect of your life looking for vulnerabilities, and most people have them. The training at Fort Monkton lasts 6 months and 20% quit before completion. learning to maintain cover identities, learning languages at intensive levels, learning surveillance detection, learning asset recruitment. It breaks people who thought they were capable. The actual fieldwork, which is what you imagined when you applied, destroys mental health at rates the service doesn't publicly acknowledge. Drinking, depression, anxiety, PTSD, moral injury. The support systems exist, but using them potentially ends your career. So officers suffer quietly until they break or quit or die. And for what? To protect Britain from real threats. Russia's intelligence operations, China's espionage, terrorism financing, cyber attacks. The work is necessary. Someone has to do it, just not you, just not most people, because the cost is too high. Your relationships, your mental health, your ability to ever be fully honest with anyone, your sense of self, potentially your life. The ones who survive a full career, they're extraordinary, and they're broken, and we'll never know their names. And that's the deal. Blaise Metroelli, the new MI6 chief as of October 2025, talked in her first public statement about the honor of leading the service, about the dedicated officers who work in the shadows to keep Britain safe, about the importance of the mission. She's right, but she didn't mention what that dedication costs, what working in those shadows does to a person, what carrying Britain's secrets does to your soul. Because if she did, no one would apply. And they need people to apply. They need a steady stream of recruits to replace the ones who break, or quit, or die. You wouldn't last a month, not because you're weak, but because you're human. And this work requires something beyond normal human capacity to sustain. The intelligence officers who do last, who make it their careers, deserve recognition they'll never receive, and support they often don't get. They sacrifice parts of themselves that can never be recovered. They carry secrets to their graves, sometimes literally, when those graves come earlier than they should, in locked bags, or from poison, or from convenient accidents that are never fully investigated. This is the real MI6, not the Bond films, not the glamorous fantasies. This is what it actually takes to protect a nation through espionage. And this is why most people, yourself included, couldn't survive it. If you've made it this far into this story, if you're lying in bed listening to this as you drift off, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I'm always curious where these stories find you. Drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. It helps more than you know. The work that intelligence officers do, the sacrifices they make, the damage they sustain, it happens in silence, in shadows, in secrecy. Most people will never know the full reality. This glimpse, sanitized and limited as it is by classification requirements, might be the closest most of us ever get to understanding. So tonight, as you fade into sleep, think about the intelligence officers working right now, at Vauxhall Cross, in embassies around the world, in hostile territories where discovery means death. They're carrying secrets you'll never know. They're making sacrifices you'll never see. They're functioning despite trauma you can't imagine. And tomorrow, they'll do it again. Because someone has to. Because the threats are real. Because Britain needs protecting. Just not by you. Because you're human. And that's a limitation this work can't accommodate. Sleep well. They won't.